Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited for this segment today. Before we begin, I am Bianca Whitaker. I am the owner of B. Whitaker Counseling and Consulting, and I have been on this journey to provide psychoeducational discussions, roundtables, all these things, just to get information out that will support us in our overall mental well being. And the mission of the company is to educate, empower, and normalize. And the discussion that we're going to have today is going to do just that. I am here with the president of the Foundations Project, Bassy, and she will, of course, introduce herself and all the sparkles that comes with her business and all the skills that she holds. But this conversation is to go a little bit outside of the box of mental wellness, and we'll be talking about careers and how that ties to your overall mental wellness and mental well-being. So we want to go outside the box but still delve deeper in that mental wellness is not just one thing, but it's an overall state of being. So at this time, I'm going to ask Bassy to introduce herself, tell us more about herself and her company, the Foundations Project. Hello, Bassy.
Thanks, Bianca. So, so you might have heard her refer to me as Bassy. My full name is Baasima, but everyone calls me Bassy. It's just a lot easier. And I started the Foundation Project a little while ago and actually connects a lot to mental health. It comes from an Angela Davis quote that radical is simply grasping things at the root. And when I start to think about the roots of what well-being looks like, or what I call radical well-being, I've kind of narrowed it down to a couple of things. For me, it's been first continuous learning, so always learning how to be a better me, how to have a better relationship with myself, with the people around me, with the world. And then second, meaningful work, because we're at work all day, every day for a lot of people. Having meaning and purpose around that, and being in a very safe and purposeful environment is really important to overall well-being. So those two aspects of the Foundations Project kind of makes up what the mission is overall. We have a separate Foundations Learning Group where I do tutor students overseas, but I also am creating learning materials that focus on well-being overall. And then there's Foundations Career Consulting, which is what I've been doing for most of my career consulting and resume writing, where I get to focus a little bit more on the meaningful work and career side. So that's the Foundations Project.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. So, hearing you speak about the project, because I feel like I only knew like one side of it, but it seems like there's a lot under the umbrella of the Foundations Project, where
Yeah.
it's even learning, actual learning, teaching of students, the career aspect, and then heard you tap a little bit into your well-being
Yeah.
and the grasping at the roots. I was like, oh. Okay. So this is the perfect segue into something that I wanted you to kind of speak on from your perspective of being a career coach and us tying that to mental wellness. And so in counseling, and I say counseling intentionally, a lot of times out there we hear therapy, therapy,
Mm-hmm.
therapy, therapy, or you're a therapist. So I am a licensed professional counselor associate. So I'm very intentional of using counseling because I provide
Mm-hmm.
professional counseling, which can overlap with others believe is therapy, but sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. And I hear stories and I'm like, that's not counseling. And
Mm-hmm.
so one thing that's not commonly known is that professional counselors do support with career counseling. But it's not uncommon that an individual is going to go to a career coach first. Thinking about careers, just that connection of how the two coexist, because someone's going to come to you and say, hey, I'm trying to get to that bag. Like I'm coming to you because I want that bag, honey.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, I'm hearing that your mind is like, oh, we got to start at the root. So
Yeah.
mental health me is like, the roots, I don't know, always jump to the bag. So can you talk to
Yeah.
me a little bit about that connection?
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, 'cause there are a lot of people who I would recommend go to a counselor before they come to a career counselor. And it varies. It depends on what people are coming to you for. A lot of times people just come, they want a resume.
Hmm.
And there's very little I can do there
Yeah.
because they're not coming to me for career coaching. They're not coming for that in-depth work to really look at where their career is overall. They just want those specific services. And that's usually where I see most of the need for more inner
Mm.
work. but I'm not able to provide those because that's not what they come to me for.
Yeah.
So I can do a lot more when someone has come for more in-depth career coaching. I definitely recommend, no matter what your career goals are, that everyone seek a counselor, a therapist.
She is
Definitely.
not a paid spokesperson, people. I promise I did not pay her to say that.
But I think at this point, a lot of people realize that, like, if you're not going to therapy, if you're not working on yourself, what are you doing? So that's one thing. I recommend that for everybody, but definitely if you are finding patterns in your work, if you find that you have gone to many jobs and you're perpetually unhappy, you can definitely talk to a career coach about that. Go to someone who maybe is more mental health informed, or go directly to a counselor and actually talk through some of the things that may be unwork related that could be affecting your work, because all usually connected. So when I think about doing the inner work and career goals, it actually makes me think about a story. So I was in university, and we'd end classes, go into the summer. And in my family, you're looking for a summer job because I was getting off a work study. So I ended up actually applying for the same job my sister did. And it might have been like right after freshman year.
Yeah.
And it was like a tour job. So you had to take these bus loads of kids. I don't think it was adults. I believe it was students, to different places in Canada. I went to a university in Toronto, and and do these tours and be very dramatic and animated. And I'm going for this job with her. We both go through the interview. She gets it and I don't. But of course, at the time, I'm devastated because I wanted this job. I wanted to be able to travel and have all the perks, and of course, get paid over the summer. I think I ended up finding a different job, like at an amusement park. But it was a really great lesson when I look back into what, I was doing that in university, but I feel like some adults are still doing that today, where they're applying for work or going for work because they get to travel, or they get good benefits, or they get a bag, and they're looking at all these external things, but not realizing there's not a good fit. For me, I'm very introverted. I'm not like my sister at all. I could not have done those tours. It would have broken me. So
yes, I'm not okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I should have never gone for that job in the first place. And I'm so down now because I didn't get something that wasn't for me anyway. So we end up looking at the perks of a role, or that we want to make a certain salary, and we still end up unhappy because what you're actually doing day to day matters much more. It doesn't, it's not completely disconnected, but it does matter a lot more than what you get at the end of a week or the end of a month, because you're doing it every day, day in and day out. So it's really important to think about, what strength do I bring to the table? What are my shortcomings? Where do I shine? What do I really want? And be more self-aware when it comes to setting career goals. Because if you set them based on things that look shiny, you end up getting something underneath that's not very pretty.
Thank you for sharing that. I was taking notes while you were speaking. And one thing I want to highlight, emphasize, put in this space, okay, and scream for the people in the back, okay? That was me screaming for the people in the back when you said, if you are not working on yourself, what are you doing? Even the attitude that you had with the what are you doing? Like, it was almost the urgency of like, what are you doing? And so don't know if we can make that into a shirt, but here the idea was given here. Yeah, like, if you're not working on yourself, what are you doing? And that's so powerful. And I don't want to go on a tangent. I was listening to a podcast or an interview today, and it was speaking about how so often we're looking outside of ourselves to fulfill something that should be internal. And sometimes we're doing that in partnership. Sometimes we're doing that in other forms of relationships where we are looking outside of ourselves and we're needing something. But instead of us tapping in and acknowledging that we have the need and that it is a need, we're looking almost for somebody else to give that to us. And so when I'm hearing kind of what you're sharing about the job, even, and thank you for sharing your personal experience of, my introverted self went for a job where I needed to be extroverted, but I wanted all the perks. And now I'm sad within myself and I'm devastated because I didn't get the job and my sister got it, but that job wasn't for you. right? Like you wanted
a little
what
bit.
you wanted what came with it, and
Yeah,
that would have broke you. Being if
yeah.
you're introverted, you got to be excited and all these things around people all day.
You know how exhausted I would have been after every
Emotionally exhausted.
yes.
and and that's so important because you also mentioned another part of the inner work. And so
Mhm,
sometimes when you are hearing about yourself from an outside perspective, it's
mhm,
so easy to get defensive. It is so easy to
mhm,
find where they were wrong or they were
mhm.
flawed, and but you don't know yourself,
Yeah,
or solid enough in you to say,
yeah.
this is what I know of myself, but you're receiving me a certain way. So it's almost like staying curious
Hmm.
of, what would make them see that in me?
Yeah, yeah.
Or recognizing when you got defensive, there probably was some truth to it. That's why you're
Exactly.
defensive. But we're not gonna plug that, right? We're not here for that. So
Exactly.
yes, and in the beginning of you starting answering that question, you said you get some of these clients in and they just want a resume, but you can recognize a greater need. Could you
Mhm.
speak a little bit more about, and you don't have to get messy, but can you speak a little bit more about what, how those needs, or the recognition of like, ooh, you need something a little bit more than just your resume tailored?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's challenging because you think about, I was bringing it back to, I'm not sure if anyone remembers in high school, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If
I
someone, yes, so if someone is trying to meet a basic need, if they've just been laid off, it's very difficult to have some of those more in-depth discussions because you just don't have the time. They're like, I need a
remember.
job, I need a job now.
Yeah.
But I feel like even that's part of the inner work, like
Hmm.
recognizing I'm in a place where I feel unstable, I feel unsafe, going into your job search with that awareness so that you don't end up in the same place
Hmm.
3 months later when you landed a job and accepted a job you can't stand.
Yeah.
And then you're back on the market. So there's a bit of that. But then for those who maybe have a little bit more time, maybe they are secure in their work and they're just looking for something better. Um, I see that in a lot of ways. I see it in, you mentioned defensiveness, which
Mm.
is often surprising to me. I do a lot of contract work, so I'm working for other companies,
Mm.
and doing kind of interviewing of professionals looking for support. Um, and there's a lot of defensiveness, and I get so confused because
Mhm.
they've spent a lot of money on these packages, but
Mm.
they're coming at me as if I am an enemy. And I'm just trying to find out
Yeah.
who you are so
Mhm.
we can present you like you're a superstar.
Right.
But you're coming at me not like a superstar.
Yeah.
So it's obvious that you don't believe you have that to offer. It's obvious that there is something where, and I'm hoping these people aren't doing this in an interview process where you're actually trying to get a
Yeah.
job and you're talking to someone as if either uh, it's kind of a little too boastful and you're not finding that middle
Mhm.
ground
Mhm.
of I'm confident in myself, but I don't have to be overly confident, or kind of a little bit aggressive in that. And I'm definitely not getting defensive if they're asking me a question about something I did or did not do. I'm not overly presenting information about things I don't bring to the table, which aren't relevant to the
Mm.
job, and kind of selling myself short. So I see that a lot. It's a range of I feel
Yeah.
I really love self-esteem, and I'm honest about that, but maybe too honest. I
Mhm.
don't recognize that, so I'm getting defensive, or I just don't see it at all, and I'm coming across as a little bit too braggy when
Mm.
that's not what you want to do in an interview. So if I see it when they're talking to me, I'm just like, if I can bring it up, if they seem open, I'm like, just keep that in mind for if you get into an interview. And then for others, I just send them off with hopes that they do well,
Yeah, yeah,
and they
yeah.
don't come across to others as they did to me.
Yeah. Thank you. My mind is going. I started taking notes and then I got intrigued. You're like, oh, snap. Right. And my note is incomplete.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that. And thank you because
Mhm.
I'm seeing so much of just connecting this to mental wellness in my work as a professional counselor. So sometimes I have, well, not sometimes, I have a pre-screening process. So somebody may come and say, hey, I want counseling and I want to do this. And so I offer a free 20-minute pre-screening process where I'm just kind of getting to know them a little bit more. They're presenting concern and if I'm a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, of course, you're asking at their level of awareness, what's been going on or what do you see as the problem? And they will tell you something, and it's like, oh no, that's not it. That's not it. Right? I'm never saying that. I'm never saying that, but I'm like, oh, okay. And immediately my mind goes to, right. I kind of look at what they're presenting with me or what at their level of awareness, what they're seeing as the concern, what underneath I'm kind of grasping could also be at play. And then I immediately go to who is or is not in your life that's honest with you. Or even how are you showing up to other people? Are you your genuine self for this to even be recognized? So I see, I'm not going too far off topic, but when I'm hearing you say, hey, you are paying a lot of money for a service and now you are coming and projecting some stuff onto me as a stranger and I don't know you. Right? It's like if people just sit in that like, hey, just met you today. So, right, like there's something there. We experience that in society, in the work, be in traffic, be at the store, where people are it's almost like you're kind of like, is there entitlement? Is there a level of like what is going? I don't know you. I am
they come at you like an enemy. And we're not enemies
at all, but that's the inner work of sit with that discomfort. Even that question you asked me, something came up. I may have my own notes of like I think she coming for me, but let me write this question down. She don't know me, right? Like you may have to go through that process in your head. So so much came to mind when you said that, and I see that there is a lot of overlap, right? Like you're getting paid to talk to these individuals, and even thinking of the 4 agreements. And one of the 4 agreements is to never take anything personally. And sometimes that's very difficult. Right? It's very difficult. But I'm putting that in the space between us and saying that, or whoever is listening, that your reaction to what someone else has said or done is not about what they have said or done. It's in you, especially if this person doesn't know you. Like it is in you that you have taken something personally. I even put something on social media, just something that came to my mind on Friday. And it was a post along the lines of, you taking something personally is about you taking something personally. Your accountability and responsibility for handling that can't be passed on. So even as they're coming to you like, hey, I need a job. I got let off. And now they're attacking you. And it's like, so you're not going to answer number 2. So we'll go to number 3. Like I can't.
And I have to do a lot of that. It's a lot of, and I've had lots of years of practice because there's a lot of empathy there because I am in one of my contracts and doing outplacement. So I know these people have been laid off. Okay. And a lot of people by surprise. So you go in with a level of compassion. But then there are those who, even with that, where we go kind of back to what I mentioned earlier about the inner work, where if you're self-aware about that, I've had people who come to the conversation saying, yes, I feel defeated, or yes, I'm feeling some imposter syndrome. And then I'm like, thank you. Now we can move on from there because we've acknowledged that. Whereas those who kind of buried it, it comes across in very unhealthy ways. So I can sit and I can be empathetic, but what ends up happening is if you continue down that path, it gets in the way of the ultimate goal, which is both of our goals, to get you a job and to get you a job that you like. So when you start to stand in your own way, especially if I'm telling you, hey, you're standing in your own way, I'm trying to help. We only have 10 more minutes. Tell me something that I can help. And you choose not to, then it's out of my hands. So being aware of that and then being aware of that in the midst of the ultimate goal. Can I take some time? Can I breathe? Can I say if I need to reschedule, if I'm not up for it, so that we can meet the goal of getting you a job? Because if you stay with a wall the whole time, we're not going to meet that goal. We're not going to meet it in the most effective way.
Something that resonates also in those instances, especially if you haven't done the inner work, when you allow your career to be part of your identity.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
now I'm like you just said, like you're contracted knowing these
Mhm.
people lost their jobs. So all
Yeah.
that I have known, all that I
Yeah.
am, all that I define myself as is
Mhm.
gone. And
Mhm.
so thank you for mentioning that last part because that is so important too, of like who are you outside
Mhm.
of these external things. So we're talking about inner
Mhm.
work. It's not that you can handle criticism. It's not
Mhm.
that, you can handle the hard things.
Mhm.
Also, who are you? If this job was to go away, if this
Mhm.
opportunity was to go away, if that bag didn't come,
Mhm.
next month, you may have to wait a few months. Like, who are you?
Mhm.
What is the
Mhm.
essence of who you are? Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
so okay. So, was there any last minute things you wanted to share? I feel like we got really in depth with that, and I thank you so much. I didn't realize how it was so connected, with
Yeah.
the work that we do, separate, completely separate,
Yeah.
but the same in
Yeah.
the sense of,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I would just reiterate that what you just said. We talked about the inner work in relation to your career goals, but the inner work outside of your career goals and recognizing that you're a
Mhm.
whole person without that. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you come feeling like this is all you have, there's going to be that sense of desperation. It's going
Mhm.
to be a very unpleasant process. But if you
Yeah.
go in saying this is what I can add, this is what I can give, this is where I have passion, as opposed to this is who I am, it's a
Mhm.
very different process. So counselor, therapist, inner work. That's the message for the first part of
Yes.
our discussion.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna like clip that part as the voice.
yeah,
Counselor, therapist, inward. Like we're just gonna rotate that, right? Like it's just gonna be like a
yeah,
bomb
yeah.
when certain things come up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. So we're gonna transition into talking about the longevity or investing in ourselves for a greater outcome in the future. And so, where this kind of comes about as a professional counselor, now let me be very transparent. I'm very aware that there is, not transparent, more candid. I'm very aware that there are systems at play, that there has been structures in our society to oppress individuals. Very aware of that. That is not a mystery. If you are offended hearing that, please rewind this recording and review the last segment where it talked about inner work, and you taking things personally. These things
Yeah.
exist. Now, if it makes you uncomfortable, that is one thing, but that doesn't mean something doesn't exist just because you're uncomfortable with it. And that it hasn't been your truth. So we have a choice that we need to invest, right? That inner work. Sometimes that inner work costs.
Mhm.
Like while it's great, it's amazing, it's needed,
Mhm.
no one owes that to you. And so it's like you have to do the work and find the means to say, I need to make this possible for myself. So
Mhm.
oftentimes I'm having individuals that's coming to me with their decades of experience, right? I've had highs, I've had lows, I've had good, I have bad, I have trauma, I have, joys, I have all these things. And I'm coming and I'm saying, hey, I'm ready to do some work because how I've been operating no longer serves me in this area of my life anymore. Cool,
Mhm.
let's go. Let's do it. And it's like, but can I get that discount? Wait, wait, wait. Like, huh?
Mhm.
And I understand, hey, this isn't convenient for me, or this isn't financially best for my situation right now, right? So there's other things that we can do, but it's almost but you're supposed to be helping, right?
Mhm.
It's almost
Mhm.
that like, well, you're supposed
Mhm.
to be a good person and give me the discount.
Mhm. Mhm.
So let me go spend my money where I want to spend it
Mhm.
and everything else outside of an internal investment of myself. So you give me
Mhm.
the discount. And I'm not shaming anybody for that. I know where a lot of that comes from with the demographics that I work with. So I get that. So I always try to frame it as an investment. Like you
Mhm.
are investing in yourself. And sometimes when you invest, you don't see the immediate result, but
Mhm.
you are going to get a return on it for
Mhm.
sure. You're going to get a return on it. And
Yeah.
so, kind of connecting that, I know that was a long spiel
That's
to
right.
get to what I'm really wanting to kind of probe for you is I can only imagine it's the same. People not
Yeah.
wanting to pay for resumes or actually pay for the service of a career coach. Because one thing they also forget is that we pay to be skilled.
Yeah.
And so, right, like we didn't just wake up and said, "Oh, I'm this, so I can do it." Like, no, we had to invest in our
Yeah.
knowledge and our skills and our talents and our experiences and our years. We had
Yeah.
to have an investment to say, "Hey, I'm competent to
Hmm.
handle this, to support you in handling this and instill something in you so you can go off." But it's
Hmm.
almost like, yeah, but give me that discount. Like you
Yeah.
charge that much and it's
Yeah.
huh? like I don't
Yeah.
have a life too.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you speak to me about just the work that you do, whether it's the resume, you
Hmm.
mentioned tailoring resumes or the career
Hmm.
coaching, that being the investment and not, well, I want to get to the bag, but I don't want to pay to get to the
Yeah.
bag. I want a discount. So, but when I get to the bag, I got
Yeah.
a bigger come up. You know, like, can you talk to me a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Sure, sure. So I think what you're talking about, probably most people who've worked independently or as small business owners have dealt with, especially when it comes to even their own
Mm-hmm.
family and friends. Um, yeah, kind of having to learn to value your worth because people around you, they just don't see it as that. They see it as,
Mm-hmm.
this is a service and I know you and this is how much I value that service.
Mm-hmm.
And if you value our relationship, then, it's kind of like, well, let's take the value of what I have to pay you. It's a lot. So when I think about that, I think about kind of two things. So one, it being a little bit of a mindset shift overall when it comes to investing in resumes, when it comes to investing in professional documents. I'm the DIY queen. Like, I would want to do things by myself and
Yeah.
not spend the money all day if I have
Mm-hmm.
to. But as the world changes, I feel like I've had to adjust. Like, I learned
Yeah.
when I was young how to change a tire. I'll probably never do that. I'm just gonna call AAA.
Yeah.
I used to file my own taxes with, online services. As a business owner, I don't do that. I need a CPA.
Yeah.
Like, because I know these people have invested in their education. They know
Mm-hmm.
way more than I do. And likely in the long run, they're going to be able to save me money, save me time.
Mm-hmm.
So, us being able to recognize when we have to make that shift, but no one can do it for you. I'm lucky in that I contract with a lot of businesses, so I don't have to, like, the people I work with independently. They come to me. I only deal with
Yeah.
referrals, really.
Yeah.
And just like you, I do that first assessment. I see if we're a good fit. If we're not, I can recommend you to somebody who is.
Mm-hmm.
I can send you to a business where maybe they have cheaper prices.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really find a good fit for what you need at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but not really shifting anymore in what value I bring and attaching that to what I charge. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I also, and I know you do too, provide pro bono work, provide
Yeah.
tips. If you want to ask me a question, you send me an email. I'm happy to give free tips and advice, do calls like this where I can share a lot of what I would tell a client.
Yeah.
I even give discounts for people who have just recently been laid off.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of ways that we support people who just can't. But if you
Absolutely.
can, it's an investment. It really shows that you not only value yourself, but you value that the services and the education and the experience that someone else is bringing you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. The second part, though, is that the industry has changed. Um, when I first got into resume writing, this was right out of college. My audience was mainly people who could afford it, or for some business, it would be those cheaper services where they probably didn't have a friend or a family member or
Right.
someone who could do it for them.
Yeah.
And it was a very different audience than it is now, with the growth of LinkedIn, with the growth of
Mm.
online applications where you're not bringing something to a business and presenting them your actually written resume with maybe 30 other candidates. You're
Yeah.
sending out an application online. There are thousands of other candidates. The
Mm.
competition, the playing field is completely different.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then recently, with the growth of AI, companies are
Yeah.
using applicant tracking systems
Mm.
um, that your resume has to be tailored for to be scanned by that.
Ooh.
And as resume writers, as career coaches, the more that changes, the more we're continually being educated on those changes, whereas the public just is not. So
Yeah.
there are so many different factors nowadays where you can definitely try and do the research yourself. You're going to get lots of conflicting information. Lots of clients come to me, they're like, well, I heard this and I heard that. That's going to continue to happen because the industry is consistently changing.
Yeah.
So give yourself grace in that. And again, usually most coaches, writers will give you a discovery call, hopefully they will answer your emails, they'll answer your hits on LinkedIn and answer those questions for you. But there's nothing that can replace people who work at this 8+ hours a day to
Yeah.
get the professional development and who can guide you in that. If it's possible for you. We understand that it's not for everyone. There are always other services and other methods to get that support if it's not.
Yeah. There were two things. One thing personally that stuck out to me was when you like unapologetically was saying, I know my value, and that value is matched in the price of the service.
Mm-hmm.
And as a business owner, which is so weird to say out loud because, baby, when I say building a plane as we fly it, and not in the way of like, Spirit Airlines, like bring your own, like not like that. And no shade to Spirit, that's just like culturally, that's like the ongoing. When
we
talking
all
about,
know what you mean.
Yes, okay. I've never been on Spirit. I don't know if you have to bring your own seat.
I actually have, but you guys
Okay.
Long time ago, before they got this reputation.
See, it's the reputation. So I do not, please do not come for me. I'm probably gonna X that out. But and I say build a plane as you fly it because I am first gen in a lot of things. And I am first gen, like when it comes to my healing, thinking the way I do and sitting with the discomforts I'm sitting with, and even starting a business. There was no one in my immediate family or circle of friends that I'm like, hey, you have a business, walk me through it. So that's what I mean by building the plane as I fly it. And so when it comes to the passion, and then knowing that I possess knowledge and skill set that is not common, it's like, oh, okay. And I'm also have a decade of experience in being an educator. So I am used to an educator in Title I schools. So that's also where you're seeing the demographics of like, oh, these systems that are in play. But then you come to this price and it's like, yeah, I do have to literally return on my investment. Like I had to invest in this. I have to have shelter. I have to, and it's not even about even where my prices are as an LPC associate. I'm not allowed to take insurance. And being transparent, I probably won't take insurance when I can, just because there's so much that goes into what is required for insurance to be accepted. And I don't want to add extra labels and markings on the demographic that I work with just to get money that I've already earned. But I digress. It's also that just feeling conflicted. So when you shared that about yourself of like, I have these years of experience. I know I know what I've invested. This is my price. I can find you someone else who may be a better suit. Like even I'm taking something from that as a business owner that is compassionate, passion plus action. Like, oh, I can do something. But like you said, I do offer pro bono, or if there is a service or like, right. If there's more information and things like that, I offer sliding scale. But it's almost like, I want you to get it, so you're not attacking your career coach in this interview where you need a job where you most likely are going to attack the people at your job, right? It's like, that may help you, but it's also like, so I'm balancing that right now. So I just want to share that you planted a seed in me and something for me to kind of reflect on, have some takeaways from this week for my personal self of just kind of reflecting that and embodying that.
But we talked about, like the investment on our end. And I think it's so important to think about the investment on the clients. And when I think about all of the headache and stress that therapy counseling has saved me, I need to probably go back and pay these people 10 times what I was paying at the time. And it's the same with the kind of resume work that I've done. I did so many free resumes when I was first getting started. And, some people who didn't even kind of acknowledge it at the start might come back and say something just in conversation. Oh, that resume helped me get like a $2,000, $5,000 increase in my salary. And it's like, I start to hear these stories over and over again. And it's not just the salary. Sometimes when you just think about that stuck feeling
Yeah.
of not having support in your job search, and then having someone to help you just feel like there's progress,
Right.
that I'm doing something, that I have some resources, that I feel more confident in what I bring because I've had these conversations with a professional.
Mm-hmm.
So both the kind of inner gains that you get, as well as some of the tangible benefits. When I'm going to a counselor, I can be more confident and speak to what I bring. I can do that in an interview. I can get more money. I can get more benefits. So
Yeah.
not only is it kind of a mental, spiritual comeuppance, it's also I'm getting more out of life from what
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting in. That is often, like I said, 10 times the
Mm-hmm.
money that I put in. And like I said, myself, I'd go back if I could and actually just like give people what
Yeah.
I feel like they deserve. Because at the time, you don't think about it. You think about the immediate results, when the long-term results you couldn't even fathom.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you sharing that as well, especially the work that we do. And I'm saying
Mhm.
we, although you're not a mental health professional, you're still helping people with their mental wellness. And people are so right. This is almost like a buzz term in society today, but your mental wellness is holistic. Just like you said, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's so connected to so much. And yeah, it's again the investment of you're going to be better than when you left.
Yeah.
You're going to be better than when you left. Now, everybody ain't doing what they're supposed to do. You know, they're not doing right by
Especially if you do
folks.
the work.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
but if you're doing it correctly and you have someone
Yeah.
invested, someone aware, someone competent, you're going to leave better than you came. I'm not
Yeah.
going to create a situation, or we don't create situations where you're dependent on us. So if you
Mm-hmm.
pop at that first job, now come back, give me some more money, and then we'll do this. No, like we're setting you up to like you good, like
Yeah.
right, like you invested in, and I invested in you to where you may not be a customer again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not bringing you on to say, okay, I got one. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
got one for life. No, you gonna go and be great.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
why.
need it up front because I know you're gonna
Yeah.
be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
I appreciate that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so, was there any last minute mentions? Because we're going to get
Mm-hmm.
into 5 helpful tips from your perspective as, and I don't want to just call you a career coach. So I don't, you're so much. You're an educator, you're a career consultant, you're a career coach,
Mm-hmm.
you're a resume writer. You're also someone who is invested in their own personal mental wellness.
Yeah.
So there's so much that comes with you. And what a lot of people may not know, you actually have a degree in sociology. So even that perspective, which is important, you see this world today. That's also perspective of the lens you bring. It's
Yeah.
not, you're never just going to approach something as the career. Okay, you got to let off.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like you said, when you come to me, I'm very aware that this is going on and that is going on. And
Yeah.
everybody wouldn't be able to have that perspective.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I think that's also important. And I want to put in a space when people are like, okay, she kind of know what she's talking about. Like, right. Like, let me let y'all know she actually know
Yeah.
a little bit more. You know, having a degree in sociology, not just like a study. I took a class and now I know, like, no, you have a degree in it. So I think that's important too, especially when this world, baby. And I'll just stop there. Just
Just leave it at that. Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
said,
No,
let the
I
dead
appreciate
bury the
that.
dead.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So we're going to get into some helpful tips. And one thing that I didn't mention earlier that I want to put in a space as well before we transition, and it may tie in perfectly because I don't really know what's about to be said. And I think this is kind of what I wanted to get into when I was talking about professional counselors can provide career counseling. Like that's
Mhm.
actually a form of counseling. And so in the work that I do, I use a lot of different, I'm more eclectic in my approach of working with clients. It depends on the client in front of me. But with my demographic of individuals and typically their concerns, I use narrative therapy. And so
Mhm.
narrative therapy is saying, hey, you've been giving other people your pen, and your pen is your worth. And you have
Mhm.
allowed them to have your pen and write your story. So now that you have this awareness, we're going to take your pen back.
Mhm.
We're going to take this back, and you know your worth. You know your value. And one form of career counseling is narrative career counseling,
Mhm.
where like you're saying, some people may not have explored their stories, or they're so defensive in it you don't really know where it's coming from, but it's a form of career counseling where you're actually looking at your stories and how they've been constructed over time. And is this what I ascribe to? Is this what represents me now? If not, okay, let's reauthor that story. And I think I wanted to put that in the space of, we keep talking about this inner work, but it can coexist to where it's not separate of, let me go process being toxic and then let me present myself one way at this job so I can make sure I still have this salary. Like, it doesn't have to exist in two different spaces. They can exist together. And so I wanted
That's
to,
radical well-being.
okay, so I was like,
root, everything, pulling up all the roots.
Dig it up, dig it up. So I wanted to put that in this space, yeah, because as we're just talking about this inner work, and again, you're not a paid person, right? I thank you. You're doing this interview for free. The knowledge, the skills, the right people, not even when you mention AI, I'm like, oh my gosh, you people out here, chat GTP, whatever it is, their resumes in the system catch that, like, by you don't get it. So even that, like, and I want, I'm going off topic, I'm going to come back, but I want people to recognize, the people listening, that this right here is pro bono work. Where people are assuming that it's like, no, it needs to be just be about me and you give me my hour. Like, you getting access to this information that other people pay for, you know, that's, look at these things as investments of like what you're getting. So, but yeah, I just wanted to put the narrative career counseling in perspective, and just saying that it doesn't always have to be two separate entities, and sometimes it needs to be like you said, your hierarchy of needs. And I wish I would have known you were going to mention that. I would have like had my visuals and talked about like people up here and like trying to be level 3, using a job to feel belonging, and that's not what the job is for. So
we
that
can
might
have
be
a whole
segment. I was about to say,
on that.
we're gonna come back to that. We gotta have you back, okay? Because we gotta get into that. But I do want to transition into some helpful tips that you have for individuals, because you've already, y'all don't know, I got a whole sticky note right here. Like, you've already been downloading into me and planting seeds into me that I didn't even know was coming, you know? So yeah, if you can just, we can go ahead and transition into some helpful tips that could be good for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm all about, giving out information. I don't feel like hoard it for what? I don't need it. Here, you take it. So I'll run through them, try to be as succinct as possible. The first one actually piggybacks a little bit of what we talked about earlier with our inner work, and the career goals aspect. So to set clear goals. So I often tell clients that your job target is a little bit like a roadmap. And the more specific you can be about that final destination, the more effective we can be in getting you there. It's just like me saying, oh, I want to go to a trip. I'm just going to go to Texas. Where in Texas are you going to go? Like, it's huge. It's the same thing with someone just picking an industry, or like, I want to be in project management, IT project management. Do you want to be more on the analyst side? Do you want to be on the product development side? Like, being really specific is important. And as mentioned, it's even more important now that the industry is changing, because employers will be scanning for relevant keywords. So if you're just putting it all out there, and a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to pigeonhole myself, your resume is just not going to be effective if you don't go the specific route. So what I often tell people, and it's common, even you see with my business, I'm like, I'm here and I'm there everywhere. It's quite all right if you have multiple targets. But you have to be clear about them. So it's much better to say, I have even, 3 targets, rather than I'm just going to go in this general area. Because if you have 3 targets, you can be very clear about, I have this resume for this target, this one for that one. And sometimes if you have it, you can definitely purchase multiple, but you can also just go through and take the one that you have, and then tailor it. So resume tailoring is really important. Like if someone comes to me and they're like, well, I sent out, 100 applications. I know you're doing it wrong, because you should be sending out really intentional applications that get more feedback than a whole bunch that don't get you anything. So the strategy is to be specific, to be targeted, to set clear goals. And you can, of course, do the inner work, and have someone help you to do that, and then move forward with your job search.
Okay. So
I'm going to pause after each one for questions.
Yeah, no. So just kind of recapping, set clear goals, be specific, not just, I want this job title, or I just want the bag, like, be specific. have keywords that's more helpful for having an effective resume and tailoring your resume. So even if you have multiple targets, you like you said, like if you have three, you can have a separate resume for those targets.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So the second one is something I think that just, I hope it's helpful so that you understand, and we as educators, as therapists, talk a lot about like circle of control. So it's a little bit like that, understanding that there are multiple factors outside of your control. It's not always you or your resume. A writer can
Mm-hmm.
help you optimize in many, many different areas so that the parts that are in your control, making sure your resume is ATS friendly, that it's structured well, it's formatted, it's written well, that you have the right approach. They can help you with all the things in your approach, but it's important so that you don't get defeated in your job search, that you don't take every rejection as it's me, as if my
Mm-hmm.
resume isn't enough. People often ask recruiters or hiring managers what they're looking for, but we can never say for sure.
Right.
Human beings come with a range of biases. We all know that, conscious and unconscious. So of course we have race, gender, age, all of those. But it could also come from a hiring manager not liking someone's name. You have research on that. If it's too ethnic, if it's hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe just because they had, I don't know, an ex-boyfriend who had your name, they
Mm-hmm.
don't, and they may not even realize that. They could have had a negative experience with someone who has your name, who sounds like you. Sometimes companies just post jobs for a formality. They know they have someone internal who they want to fill the role.
Oh,
They just have to go by the book. So
yeah.
you and probably the thousands of people who applied were never going to get that job anyway.
Mm.
It could be that they just filled the role 2 minutes before you applied. It could be that your application fell in at the end of the day. The hiring manager's tired. They're tired of reading through a whole bunch of documents. So there are so many reasons why there could be rejections. Sometimes we just have no idea why. So if you know you've done all of the work with what's inside of your control, just breathe and let the rest go.
Mm. You got me some highlights there, honey. It took me back to where I remember a time when,
Yeah, it's a stressful
yeah,
process.
absolutely. But there is some resolve in everything is not personal.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some things outside of our control, which may not be fair. Let me say that. So when I'm saying resolve, it's not that it's fair or it's right, but yeah, that
Yeah.
really, yeah, just even that, like, you got it in like right before the deadline, and
Mm-hmm.
or even the like, oh, I already knew who I wanted for this.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that we wouldn't know, and you're sitting here hoping, like, oh, I got it, I did it. Yeah, girl, I think that brought something up in me, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
I've
that's
heard it firsthand. Go ahead.
yeah. No, no, no. Go ahead.
Well, I heard it firsthand. Like I think I had a family member who was up for a position, and she was like, "They just have to post it, and then I can apply, and then I'm going to get it."
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a hiring manager myself, and I've had days where it's just like this person didn't follow the rules, or
Hmm.
it could be this small thing, or you just feel like, oh, I really like this person in the interview. I don't know why, but I
Yeah.
like them. We vibed. I'm going to move them on. And I even had a person like that. I had a teacher who had a really great interview with her, but I'm outranked. I had to send her interview to my director, and he
Mhm.
was like, nah,
Mm.
I don't know why, but she didn't get
Right.
to move on, even though she's probably like, "Dang, I had a great interview."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That one.
Yeah.
That was eye opening,
Yeah.
to say the
Yeah.
least. But we won't turn this into my own session. So, but yeah. So my takeaway for that, just it's going to be some things outside of your control. Again, focus on what is in your control or influence.
Yeah.
Even if you can't control something, do you actually have some way to influence it?
Yeah.
And outside of that, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Number three is to try and treat your resume and your LinkedIn and interview a bit like a proposal. It's a piggybacking off of number one, where you want to set that target and set that clear goal. And once you're creating your LinkedIn profile or creating your resume, it's like creating a proposal for what um, the employer is looking for on the opposite end of that. It's hard. is you do try to find the balance between what you're bringing to the table, but making that relevant. Setting up your narrative and your brand, but making it relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many people who are like, I really want to include this in my resume, or like, I have this job I had 15 years ago and it did a lot for me and I loved it. And I'm just like, hiring manager's not even gonna look at that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of feelings around what is important to us in our career, and that's definitely valid. If you can find value in that, you can definitely amplify that on your profile and on your resume. But overall, what you're asking yourself constantly is, what is this employer looking for? Because I'm trying to give them that.
Mm-hmm.
And even the person doing the interviewing, sometimes that may not even be the owner or the manager or even the person doing the role. Sometimes that person is in HR and they have a checklist.
Mm.
They're looking for specific things in you.
Yeah.
And if you go in talking about how you like fishing, it's just the goal is to fill this role. Tell us how you can fill this role better than the person who's going to come after you or before you.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you create your proposal is by looking at the job posting. Go through, look for the exact keywords, descriptions that they are presenting for that particular role. If you have that experience, make sure that's outlined clearly in your resume. And we'll talk more about how to highlight that in ways that help set you apart. But make sure that you're aligning your unique brand, not just saying, here I am and I'm great, but here I am and I'm great because I can give you what you're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
which is XYZ.
Yeah. With you sharing that, I want to go back to the LinkedIn,
Mhm.
but it's also that last part where you just mentioned, like, I'm great and this is what I offer, because
Yeah.
it's even that part. Sometimes for some of us, it's, oh, I know I'm it, but
Mhm.
it's hard to communicate that to you guys.
Mhm.
Like, I know I am a
Mhm.
sparkle in
Yep.
this area. Like, there's nobody better, but I
Mhm.
don't know how to get you to get that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so even the work that you do is
Mhm.
supporting us in that,
You take
because
that out. Yeah.
I can all day tell you, baby, put me on a Title I campus, let's go.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me to get that
Yeah.
to the principal that what if this is your
Exactly.
first year in Title I and you don't even,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
LinkedIn. So two things with LinkedIn. A question I had is, are employers looking for potential candidates through LinkedIn? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It
Okay.
used to be that, well, one, they just look at your resume, and then with the internet blowing up, they might try to Google you and see what your internet
Mhm.
presence was. Now you just go LinkedIn because it's a site for professionals. So if they want to see who you are as a professional, they're going to find you on LinkedIn. If you're not there,
Okay.
fix that.
Hmm.
And then if you are there, make sure you're there as your best self. And then sometimes employers aren't technically, because sometimes we're thinking about them posting the job, reviewing your resume, and then they might look at you on LinkedIn to maybe see if they want to move forward with an interview. Sometimes recruiters, because employers hire recruiters, especially big companies, they're
Hmm.
actually looking for specific talent. They hire recruiters, and people talk about being reached out to on LinkedIn by recruiters all the time.
Hmm.
So you could be comfortable in your job, and a recruiter reaches out to you with an offer that's 2 times the salary. It looks like you
Yeah.
never know what opportunities you might be missing by not having a strong LinkedIn presence. It's crucial.
Okay. Okay. When I say you are downloading, right? So the audience doesn't know that we didn't speak in detail about what the conversation would be. We just kind
Yeah.
of I gave you some talking points
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't really discuss it. So I'm learning as the audience is learning as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talked about LinkedIn, and I won't go on a tangent, but I feel it bubbling, but I won't go there. But I'm also often confused because I was told that, or knew that LinkedIn was more of a professional site. And I am starting to see so much personal information, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to be very mindful of get information out, not necessarily to recruit for a job, but I want to get information out in a way that this is useful for people
Mm-hmm.
who are on a professional site. And then
Yeah.
sometimes I find myself like, do I need to go back and figure out what LinkedIn is now? Because I had it
Mm-hmm.
at one point, took a few years off because, right, just
Mm-hmm.
doing my thing. And now it's like, oh, you got a business. And now I'm like, oh, I'm seeing families. Oh, I'm like, I don't, does my
Mm-hmm.
information belong, or
Mm-hmm.
did it transition without me being
Yeah.
aware?
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's making me think LinkedIn has definitely changed over time. From my understanding, it's
Your
still a
professional
professional
understanding.
networking
Okay.
site. Yes. And I actually don't see, and it could be those who are in my network, I actually don't see any posts on like
Okay.
that would be like something on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
Um, I've definitely seen, I think LinkedIn has incorporated more videos.
Okay.
I've definitely seen kind of people post and engage more, whereas it used to just be this is my profile and leave it alone.
Hmm.
I'm also seeing LinkedIn make changes like they've added to the skills section. But again, all this is very professional changes.
Yeah.
And if you're ever unsure, LinkedIn is great. They have like ambassadors, they have articles
Hmm.
that you know when your site, your profile has like reached star status. So they have lots of tools to help you. I would stick with keeping it professional. I
Hmm.
think those who are leaning towards the more personal side are one, maybe a little confused about it themselves, or two, they're not relying on LinkedIn for professional advancement. It could be somebody who has their own business, who is at the peak of their career and they're not
Yeah.
using it for. So all of this is relative. A lot of the tips here are for people who are sending out traditional online applications. But if you're a consultant, if you're a business owner, if you have the space to kind of set your profile the way you want,
Hmm.
or your brand is based on that, then you can have a lot more leeway. But for those of us who might be relying on it for career advancement, to try and keep it professional.
Okay. Now that makes sense. I got what I need.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need LinkedIn to do
Mm-hmm.
something for me.
Yeah.
Y'all about to get my kids.
Yeah.
So I can kind of see
Yeah.
that, but I don't post on there often. I started to, and I kind of stopped because I'm like, I don't really know the
Yeah.
lay of the land.
Yeah.
So yeah, so thank you for that.
Okay.
That was my last question about LinkedIn. So if you have any more tips, we can get
Mm-hmm.
into
Yeah.
those.
Yeah. So we'll do 4 and 5. So 4 is interview likability. So we've gone from like goals to resumes and LinkedIn. And now when you get to the interview stage, and this also, I think everything is timed back to doing that inner work.
Yeah.
Um, often, often quote the quote that's about people remembering how you make them feel.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go in an interview and you can share all the details that you want, but people are often going to remember the vibe, the feel that they got from you. So just to keep that in mind, you have to be, it's tricky. You have to be confident yet humble. You have to be personable and natural, but still professional.
Mm-hmm.
You have to seem like an expert or kind of perfect for the role, but not a know it all and annoying. You have to be passionate, but not overbearing or overwhelming or too much. So it's
Yeah.
a very delicate balance. So definitely practice.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us, even if we're very personable, even if a person is extroverted, if they feel like they talk a lot, they talk well, or they perform well in interviews, you don't always know that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you might get nervous and maybe you go off on tangents. So it's like me involved as well. So it's helpful to imagine what you would want to hear or experience as a hiring manager. Record yourself, reach out to a coach or even a friend who will tell you the truth, not someone who's a yes person, if you need help. But remember that likability. Remember that you want to sound like you are good for the job, but you also want to sound like a humble and good person. And striking that balance isn't easy. So practice.
It's not easy. So even when you were speaking, I'm like, she's coming for me, but she's not
I'm
coming for me. No, because the things you were saying are true. When you're like, don't go off on that tangent, and balance your personality and the professional.
not.
Like, oh, I can see why I didn't get that job, and why, right? Like that's what I'm kind of going through. Uh, yeah. So yeah, it's not easy. Thank you for putting that at the end. Like it's not easy. It's almost sometimes I feel it's almost like you got to tap dance, but you don't know how to tap dance. But as long as it's that, like,
You
hey, you
sound all right.
going somewhere, and then it can work. But no, it's not easy. It's not easy. And for someone who, before I transitioned into my current role, outside of my part-time work as an LPC associate, it was
Mhm.
several interviews and,
Mhm.
just leaving like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the point, you just like, I killed that. And then it was after a while, I was like, oh, I don't think that one was it. Like, or like, I'm like, there was a lot of
You
laughter.
were self-aware. You were reflective.
Yeah, but I also had to go home and eat some whipped cream because I'm like, I think I took an L. Not like they don't even have to tell me. So yeah, even just balancing all that. But I do like the tips that you gave. Record yourself, watch yourself, sit
Mm-hmm.
with that discomfort of how you would come off to someone else. Have someone
Yeah.
that you trust, not
Mm-hmm.
someone that's just gonna hype you up.
Yeah.
If you really had less yes men in your life, you probably
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't really need a lot of counseling. But we're not talking about that. Just make sure you have people that you can trust and that will be honest with you. Um,
And you're open to that feedback.
yes, of how you're being received,
Yeah.
not that that's your intention. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like you came for me a little bit, but I know you didn't. So I don't want to be one of your clients that's like, excuse me, what you say? Like you, like I'm not
We're ready to fight.
right. Like what you say? What? Not that,
Yeah.
but I'm sharing that in humor and saying that I can definitely see from what you just shared why some of the roles I didn't get. Well, I'm like, I knew that one was mine,
Yeah.
and then again, going back to those external factors. So
Mm-hmm.
finishing your journey, you were
Yep.
step 4 in the journey. So what's
Yep.
step 5?
Step five is actually going backwards a little bit, is where I wanted to end with like practical resume tips.
Okay.
The resume is where we start. It's where we can, again, for traditional online applications, you can get your foot in the door to hopefully be able to put into practice some of the other tips. So this is kind of an overflow. So I have 3 resume tips, things that I see that could be small tweaks that people can make. Um, to make sure that their resume is just a little bit more effective.
Mm-hmm.
So first is, again, for traditional resumes where not every company, sometimes it's small businesses don't use applicant tracking systems, like a subscription that you have to pay for. But if you're applying for a company where either you don't know or it's likely that they use one thing you want to avoid on your resume is text boxes, columns, any of those keywords being put in a box of information that likely cannot be scanned.
Okay.
So I see people with that column text boxes, sometimes tables as well. ATS, applicant tracking systems, can't read those. So if you're not sure, just go for a more simple format. I often tell people we used to make really, really pretty resumes, and we can still do it, but we've actually kind of toned things down because the systems can't read them as well. So you can definitely have one. You can have multiple versions, but when you're applying, try to remove anything where those important words are in a box of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
Second, for resume tips, is to include those keywords. So we talked earlier about how you're creating a proposal. My literal step is going through a job description for a client, highlighting the keywords, copying and pasting them into the resume, and not leaving them like that. Please don't do that. I've had clients who are like, I'm just going to copy and paste the job posting and put it in like white text and send it out. Please have integrity. That's gotten us all in trouble because systems are going to look for a certain ratio, percentage of keywords. If you're too high, they're going to kick you out. So what I do is I'll copy and paste it in there, but then I'm writing for hours on the summary in the skills section and incorporating those words in my writing. I'm not just copying and pasting them in there.
Yeah.
So that you can definitely adopt my strategy if you'd like, but make sure that you are in some ways seeing a balance between some of the keywords related to the job and the job posting and what you have throughout your resume, especially when you're talking about your summary at the top in the skill section. It's usually around the middle part. And then the third one is to set yourself apart. As online applications have gotten more popular, as people have started to use more resume writers, you'll have more competition. And using keywords and having that formatting won't be enough anymore. It's important to have that narrative, to create your professional brand, and then to set yourself apart by showing not only can you do the job, but you can do it better. And we do that by having concrete accomplishments. So we don't want to just describe what we did day to day. We can do like a couple of lines of that on the resume, but usually when you get down to the bullets or when you get to most of the content, that's when you want to start saying, I did this and so well that it impacted the business in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally, you want to make them measurable. One, because it gives context. If I just say I increased, I don't know, student learning, or I increased sales, that's very different than saying I increased sales by 50%. So it gives a quick context that a hiring manager can understand, like, oh, we actually had an impact. And then two, as human beings, we're all busy. It's just more likely that that accomplishment will even be seen or read if it has a number rather
Yeah.
than a whole bunch of words.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can, and again, writers and coaches can help ask you questions. It's very difficult. I often tell people to think in metrics. We don't think in metrics. No one goes to their job and they're like, oh, I did this 3% more today. No
Yeah.
one does that. So you have people on your side who can help you try and recall and tell stories where you can try and pull
Yeah.
out some of those metrics. Even if it's a couple more than you have, that something. And that way you can show that I can do the job, but I can also do it really, really well in a way that this business is going to benefit. Because at the end, that's what they're going to want. We want more revenue. We want more clients. We want a better reputation. How can you give that to us, as opposed to just coming in, clocking in, doing the job, and clocking out?
Yeah. With the last part you mentioned, just kind of tuning in the mental health, right? The mental health perspective. I can even see something which we should be reflecting on ourselves, right? Introspection is needed.
Yeah.
But even taking time, intentional time of noting accomplishments, not just going through the day, going through the motions, but even if
Mhm.
you did set up time, right? Because we're going to have our evaluations, we're going to have
Mhm.
those, and that's more so of like, let me just keep my job. You know what I mean? Or like, let me get more money. But
Yeah.
actually sitting back and taking time and reflecting on that area of your life, of
Yeah.
work. What am I doing? What is my impact? What
Yeah.
has been different? Has the culture changed? Even if you can't put a number to it immediately, note those things down so you can find
Mhm.
ways to communicate that. um,
Mhm.
that really stood out to me because we know we do great work. We
Mhm.
know, well, some of us know we do great work. Some of us,
I
right,
love.
is look,
Yeah.
as long as that check come on
Bare
March the
minimum.
15th, right? Like
Bare minimum.
early. Do you hear me? So so but speaking for that, right? Because the audience member that is probably going to listen or even get this far is like, yeah, this is kind of what I was sitting in, or where I'm wanting some growth or some movement or to see some momentum. Take time to honor yourself in
Mhm.
reflecting in that area of your life. Maybe not
Yeah.
even for the purpose of, okay, how can I level up? But
Mhm.
how have I leveled up? How have
Mhm.
I grown from here to here? So just connecting
Mhm.
that to the overall mental wellness.
Mhm.
Right. Like I said, you're downloading into me because
Mhm.
new career, two careers. So people don't know I have two careers. So LPC
Mhm.
associate right now is part time. Plus I have
Yeah.
my day job, and I'm around humans, and I'm around little humans, and I'm investing in their well being. And you do good work, or you hear things and you're kind of
Mhm.
so far removed from it, like, oh, I'm just doing my job. But no,
Yeah.
sit in that, and like,
Yeah.
be curious. What will make them say that, or what was
Yeah.
different? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, thank you for that. That's definitely
Absolutely.
some
Yeah.
homework, you know.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought it back to that, because we do. I hear that all the time. One, I just did my job. I know I did great. I just went in. I don't really think about accomplishments. Like, I'm not bragging about myself, which is fine. But not only will it help in terms of presenting yourself to potential employers for networking, it
Mhm.
helps you in your self esteem and knowing the impact that you've had. So make it a practice at the end of each month or
Mhm.
quarter or week, if you want. Be like, go through your emails. Who gave you kudos? Go through all of
Mhm.
the projects that you've done. What has been the progress that I've led? How have I
Mhm.
impacted this? Um, keep a keep a document with quotes of things that people send you, or accomplishments that you've noticed. And don't discount if it's not measurable. I want to make that clear. We try to measure it because it looks good on the resume, but an accomplishment over a responsibility is better with
Mhm.
a measurement or without. So still focus on the things that you've done to contribute where you are. Yeah, and that can help you realize that, yeah, maybe I need to apply for this, director instead of senior manager level. Like, I know what I'm bringing to the table because I literally have the evidence in front of me.
Mhm. And to piggyback off of just what you shared, sometimes I am noticing
Mhm.
that we don't know, an individual doesn't know when it's time for their level up. Like they haven't even processed that
Mhm.
they have already leveled up. So in their
Mhm.
mind, they're staying in their, oh, this is my lane and I'm comfortable here and I'm thriving here. But it's like, you've outgrown that.
Yeah.
But the people are going to keep you there because you do the
Yeah.
service very well and you're better than
Exactly.
everybody else. But
Yeah. And you're
you
cheaper if
actually,
you're at a lower level.
yeah, but actually, you will be an amazing coordinator
Mm-hmm.
because the questions you ask and the way you organize, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when the people above you are coming to you and like, how would you
Mm-hmm.
do that? Or can I get your notes? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like taking note of that. That
Yeah.
can be even in that reflection piece that you kind of
Exactly.
mentioned of
Yeah.
maybe it's not just about me doing so great in my role, but maybe I'm showing traits and leadership characteristics or other
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that's beyond my role.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
homework. Okay, so far you walked us through the 5-step process that even gave us some bonus at the
Yeah.
end. This has been so insightful. And how many of us sit down and talk with a career consultant or a career coach and an educator with a
Mm-hmm.
sociologist lens? So I just need people to understand, right? Like just the value that's here.
Yeah.
It's not always just about, sometimes it's you having multiple sticky notes from things that, is being said of like, okay, I
Mm-hmm.
can incorporate this, or let me get my crew together. Let me get my tribe together. Y'all, I came across this. Have y'all thought about this? Let's start something there. Um,
Yeah.
Something so important. So I thank you so very much for your knowledge, your skills, your talent, your wisdom, and your vulnerability. You've shared
Mm-hmm.
some personal things with us, even from your the hard lessons that you had to endure.
Yeah.
So, in closing this conversation, which I feel like it can go on forever, and I would
Right.
love to do a part two. I already have some
Yeah.
ideas, from
Yeah.
things that were shared here, and if there's any inquiries that come up,
Yeah.
we can definitely come to the table and
Yeah.
kind of tailor it like, okay, we're going to focus just on
Mm-hmm.
that. Or
Yeah.
even if it's something like a workshop,
Yeah. Oh,
where
absolutely.
it's, they just come to us, they get
Yeah.
the few points, and yeah,
Yeah.
so we'll definitely, me and the Foundations Project, honey,
Yeah.
we'll go
Oh,
ahead. I'm already brain
yes. The
going.
partnership is solid. So we are
Y'all
here
heard
for
that?
you all. Yeah.
Y'all heard that? It is solid, honey.
Solid.
But again, the demographic that I'm working with, and of course the world can see this, but just the demographic that I'm working with, I am so invested in, just get information. Even if you're not
Mm-hmm.
using it right now, like you said, we're not going to gatekeep information. Now, when you're paying for a service, absolutely, you're going to pay for that service. But when it comes to just information, this is here. Did you think about this? Did you know this? You seeing a trend that I done lost the last 3 jobs and I keep getting laid off and I'm blaming everybody else. Maybe it's deeper than the job. You know what I mean? Like this
Mm-hmm.
is just so, what's the word? Invaluable? No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, invaluable. We can't
Mm-hmm.
put a price tag on this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something that can go.
Mm-hmm.
So in this amazing conversation that I don't want to end, but it will continue in another way, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask, are there any final words to the wise that you would like to emphasize or like stamp brand in the minds of the listener?
Yeah, yes. I have a couple things. Some that might have been kind of sprinkled throughout, but I want to make it very clear at the end. And what I always like to tell people is what is for you is for you.
Mhm.
So taking it back to my initial story, and this specifically for those who have the privilege to take time in their job search. For those who are in more dire situations, I definitely understand kind of landing the job that you need, and then from there,
Yeah.
making steps toward finding more meaningful work. But making sure that your job search strategy is effective, landing a good job that's comfortable but may not be your ideal, and then you end up right back in the market. So trying to avoid that as much as possible and helping people find the work that they find they can have growth with and professional development, making sure that they find those roles, that they do the research, that they get help in doing that, but also all the things that are out of your control, just recognizing that I need to do the work and just kind of sit down and figure out, being self-aware about where I'm actually going to be fulfilled, And then going through that strategy and making sure that I know if I miss out on something, it maybe just wasn't for me. And what's for you is for you, and often will find you.
Mhm.
Um, so that's the first one. And the second one, which is why I like to blend a lot of the well-being and mental health work, is
Mhm.
take care of yourself. I got into um, career coaching, resume writing, because I remember looking for my first job, like
Mhm.
set job out of college, and I still, it's like it's trauma. I hated it,
Mhm.
and I hear people all the time talking about how awful job hunting is, and there's very little we can do about those systems that are set up,
Right.
and they're out of our control. But I often tell clients to try and input self-care practices.
Mhm.
So take specific days to research and look for roles and apply. When I was looking years ago, it was Mondays. Mondays, I would look at
Yeah.
all my jobs. I'd apply for them, send them off. That was it. I'm not looking for the rest of the week. This is all I have.
Yeah.
My cup can
Mhm.
only do Mondays, and that's it.
Right.
If you can do more, that's great. But try and put a bubble around that time, especially if it's really taxing for you. If it's not, then feel free to apply as much as you want. But if you
Mhm.
find that it's taking a lot out of you, take care of yourself in that. And then when you're done, input some self help practices. Schedule your therapy session right after your job hunt day. Something about coming home and having whipped cream, like schedule a dinner with yourself or a dessert. Do something to pour back into and empower yourself. And then let us know if you can help.
Mhm. Thank you for that. And not to extend the conversation, but something that resonated with your words to the wise, especially the self-care part, is it's not just about feeling good. It's what is
Mm-hmm.
needed. What
Yeah.
do I need? I know I need this job. So that is a form of self-care. I have
Mhm.
to go and look for the resume, I mean, tailor my resume or look for these positions. So even just putting into the space that your self-care may require work.
Mhm.
Sometimes people it's presented as rest, and rest
Yeah.
is self-care, but this is a form of self-care that will require work. It may be
Mhm.
taxing. You need to know yourself, like, I know I'm going to be drained, I know I'm going to be
Yeah.
in a mood, so let me do it at a time that's most convenient, to where I'm not affecting other people, or
Yeah.
to where I can schedule it to where, okay, I got my counseling session the next day, or whatever the
Mhm.
case may be. So just know, I thank you for kind of speaking about the structure and organization
Mhm.
of moving forward with self-care,
Moving
because it's
forward.
not
Yeah.
always just, okay, I'm gonna go get my nails done and have go to happy hour. It's sometimes
Mhm.
it's no, it's going to require work. And
Mhm.
I really think about individuals who know themselves in that way,
Mhm.
and even thinking of like neurodiverse individuals, to where
Mhm.
you may be overstimulated or may be overwhelming to the point where you experience burnout. So that
Mhm.
will support as well of, I have my structure, I'm just going to
Yeah.
focus on applying to 2 jobs today, and that's
Yeah.
it. That's
That's
self-care.
it.
And
Mhm.
I may backdoor, and Friday I may try to get one, or have a system that works for you, because sometimes self-care requires work. It's not
Yeah.
just a removal of work.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
thank you for putting that. That is a very important point that I don't think I've has come across in the discussions that I've had with other individuals. So that's something that's
Mhm.
very much needed.
Mhm. Agree.
Yeah. So Bassie, I thank you on behalf of my business, B. Whitaker Counseling Consulting. I thank the Foundations Project and all that you're doing, and you sharing this wealth of knowledge and just awareness. And I know so much more is going to come up. I am already
Mhm.
thinking about, okay, let's make a one pager. And you know what I mean? Like career coaching versus
That's
professional
all.
coaching,
Yeah.
where like I'm
Yeah.
already seeing some things to where we can help to remove barriers for
Mhm.
individuals who may not even thought this far. So I encourage the people to, you know, take notes as you watch this video. Hopefully we have the timestamp so you can go back, and then to give yourself some homework of like, what does this look like for you? Do you know
Mhm.
the impact that you bring, right? Like, you don't
Mhm.
have to start with something so tangible right now, but just reflect. Do you
Mhm.
know the impact you bring? Do you know what sets you apart? Do you know what you want? Are you fulfilled?
Yeah.
And just kind of starting there, and just letting, get checking in with you to move forward and
Mhm.
making some of these moves that was suggested. So
Yeah.
I thank you so much. I cannot wait till we reconvene
Connect
again.
again. Yeah.
Yes. And before we officially end this, could you please let people know where they can find you?
Sure. So, website, foundationsproject.com. My name is like it is here on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active, Baasima Hendrickson. And then the company site there is the Foundations Project as well. Also on Instagram and Facebook as the Foundations Project, but not as active. Like I'll post there, but I'm a lot more accessible on LinkedIn as it's a professional site. So that's where you can send me a message. You can definitely connect with me. I post often. I try to give a lot more tips, both well-being tips, some that I've
Mm.
gotten from being with a care counselor for so many years, some on jobs, but overall, lots of tidbits that can just help someone's overall well-being. So definitely feel free to contact me if you're not sure if you need more assistance. Ask.
Mm.
Do free discovery calls, or again, you can send us an email through the website or through LinkedIn, and we'll let you know if we can help. And I will always refer you to someone if I can.
Okay. And thank you again, final thank you for supporting the mission to educate, normalize, and empower. This conversation has done that beyond what I expected or could have thought of. So I thank you.